One of the biggest tragedies of the PlayStation 1 era, at least for skateboarders, was Thrasher Skate and Destroy. This game had a ton of potential, had a lot going for it, but the gameplay side just wasn't really there. It really needed to get a sequel, and it never did, except that it kind of did. It just switched sports. Today we're going to take a look at Dave Mirra, specifically the Maximum Remix Edition. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, the channel where you can learn something new about skateboarding 3 times a week. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we take a look at something in or sometimes around the skateboarding world, and we talk about learning tricks or about your favorite pros or about skateboarding video games like this one. This one is Thrasher, one of my favorite skateboarding games of all time, and is probably the most realistic one up to date. Including Skate and True Skate and anything else you can think of. Session might finally dethrone it, but it would take about 20 years since this one came out before we see anything do better. The only problem with this game is that, well, first of all, the controls are really bad, but secondly, there's not that much to do. Every level is just a high score challenge, and then you get chased out of the level by a cop or a dog or a mugger or something like that. See my full review right here. There's also contests, which are just high scores again. So I always wondered what would happen in Thrasher 2 if they made more challenges and they really stepped up the gameplay side of it. And now I finally know, thanks to Dave Mirra. This game came out in 2000, 1 year after this one, and it was also made by Z-Axis, the same guys. I don't have a case for this one, but this is what it looks like. I'm playing the Maximum Remix version, but Dave Mirra came out in 2000 for the PlayStation, the Dreamcast, and for PC, but the Maximum Remix version is PlayStation only, came out in 2001, and it's definitely the one you want to get. It's basically Dave Mirra 1.5. It's got extra levels, extra playable characters, it's got more music, the soundtrack is bigger. It actually comes with a soundtrack CD in the case as well. The controls are slightly updated to be a little bit more fluid, so it's definitely the version you want to get, although it came out to pretty bad reviews, mediocre to bad, I guess. But a lot of the complaints that I saw were about the graphics and the textures not being so great. But nowadays, looking back on it, any 17-year-old game is gonna look kind of crappy anyway, so I think we can forgive it for that. But it's definitely an interesting game, and let's take a look at it. You can see the heritage of Thrasher shine through pretty much immediately. When you bail, you collapse and you bounce off the ground like a rag doll and the camera hangs back. Look at it, it's basically the same game, but with a bike. If you aren't familiar with Thrasher, the game has a lot of quirks compared to other games you've played, like the grinds. You can throw yourself at a ledge going almost perfectly parallel to it, and it feels like an earthquake hits. You get thrown left and right really hard, and it can be impossible to hold on for very long. But if you lose your balance, you don't bail, you just pop off the coping at an angle, and there's still a good chance you'll land it, especially if there's a bank or something there to catch your fall. In fact, you'll land most things, even if you air out of a quarter pipe. If you are anything but flat against the ground, you'll be okay, but push it too far and you'll slam, and the game will tell you why. But there are a few more quirks to the grinds. Since you don't bail when you lose your balance, you can do a ton of grinds over and over and over again in a combo. There were a lot of times when I needed just a few more points in a high score challenge, and I just did this. You can get a lot of points just stringing together combos like this because it's usually really hard in most cases, just not while going slow on rails, then it's no problem. But there are a lot more than just high score goals this time around, and they're mostly realistic ones too, like hitting a certain gap or grinding a certain obstacle for a minimum distance, and they go about it in a great way. You have 4 goals at the start of the level. When you get close to one of them, it pops up on screen, and the actual obstacle you need to hit will light up. This helps a lot. I love the original Tony Hawk games, but think back to Venice Beach. You have to hit those VB transfers, but what does that mean, and where are they? Who knows, just go figure it out. But Dave Mirra cuts way back on all the frustration of blindly fumbling around through the level, and it's a great idea. There's a lot less wasted time and skipped goals. In fact, you basically have to complete every level 100% as you go. You finish the first 4 goals, and then it gives you 4 more. And I really like how natural they feel. For the most part, it seems like things you might actually do if you were really there riding that spot. Speaking of the levels, there are 20 of them in this version of the game. It's kind of out of control. You can play for a few hours and realize that you've barely scratched the surface. And unlike a lot of the games that I have to play for this channel, I was really happy to see that there was a lot left to play. Most of the time I just get frustrated and I can't wait for the game to get over with. The levels themselves are not giant, but they're not bad for PS1 standards. But they really aren't varied all that much. Sure, you'll be on a beach in one level, airing over volleyball nets, and then jumping over snowbanks in the other one. There's a level that has paths cutting through a forest too, and as good as all these are, the majority of them are just different skate parks. Like every park and every Woodward location at the time is represented here. There might be a warehouse or some other nearby stuff in a lot of those levels, but it's really just skate park after skate park, and that started to get a little bit old, but that's kind of a small issue though. Let's talk about the controls. It's very Tony Hawk-esque, which is probably another reason why the reviews weren't all that great, but there's a lot more going on. The square button is mapped to tricks, and the circle button to modifiers. At first, it can be kind of tough to understand what the difference is, but here's how it works. The tricks are standalone tricks. The modifiers can be done alone, but they can also be done with a trick. So, down square is backflip, down circle is bar spin. You can do the flip and the bar spin to do them at the same time and make a flip driver. Add in some spins and you got a stew cooking. There are even manuals, but I'll be honest with you, they're useless. The control screen says to hit up, up, or down, down, but it's not like Tony Hawk. That's not a command you're putting in. What you have to do is just tilt enough that you land on the one wheel, and most of the time you'll just instantly land. It takes a lot of effort to balance a manual, and you can do it, but not really in a combo. You only find yourself doing it when the game asks you to, and it's not that often. There are a lot of wall tricks too, at least compared to skateboard games at the time. You can fast plant, wall tap, and wall ride. It's a shame though, the wall ride was the best part of Thrasher. Here, it really doesn't feel like much. There are a couple issues with the controls though. First is that they aren't really that intuitive. Think about Tony Hawk. If up is nose grind and left is nose slide, then what's a crooked grind? Up left, obviously. It makes perfect sense. Here though, it's almost random. I feel like I had to learn a lot of the tricks just by memorization. Since it asks you to do certain tricks all the time, it can be annoying because you always have to pause and look them up. But the trick plus modifier system doesn't always work. What about a backflip tail whip? Both of them are tricks, not modifiers. So you want to do them at the same time, you have to go down right, down, then square. On paper, it does make some level of sense, but it makes experimenting really tough. In the Tony Hawk games, most of the tricks are roughly the same amount of time. Harder tricks are a little bit slower, but it's rare that you won't have enough time to do a trick on an average air. This game is different. Since there are so many button combinations that have a flip in them, you might accidentally do a backflip with almost no air time, hoping for like a turn down or a can or something like that. And because of this, I mostly stuck to the few tricks that I knew, and I didn't experiment that much. That really held me back in contests and high score challenges. Luckily, I can rail dance. I did this a million times. There's something else too. Front flip is up, up square, but down, down square is actually double backflip, not backflip. And you'll pretty much never have enough time to land that until you upgrade your bike later on. Since it's such a basic button combo to hit, I found myself doing doubles all the time. Luckily, if you land upright after the first flip, it'll let you get away with it. It does get worse though. At one point, I had to do a truck driver. And from my years of watching BMX and the X Games, that name rang a bell, but I couldn't remember exactly what it meant. I went through the trick list, and it's nowhere to be found. I knew it had something to do with a bar spin, because spinning your bars around can be like turning a truck wheel, I guess, right? Well, it's a 360 with a bar spin. It's simple, it doesn't have its own button input, so it really sucks that they wouldn't just tell you what that meant, then it wouldn't have been so hard. So even though there's a lot going on, the difficulty of the game comes from doing tricks, not from finding all the hidden tomatoes to throw at people or making the birds poop on the tourists, so I appreciate that. I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to do a nothing flare. That's a no-handed, no-footed backflip 180. So you hit down square to start the backflip, then hold R1 or L1 to spin. After that starts, hurry up and hit down left, down right circle, and you'll do the nothing. When you start to get the hang of what you're doing, it feels satisfying doing combos like this on purpose. Overall, the game is very good, but it has one fatal, unforgivable flaw. It's on a bike. Now, I respect BMX, I think it's cool, but it just doesn't translate to games that well. First of all, your character is just way too big. It's easy to get caught on stuff, bump into walls, and just have trouble getting around in general. For a fast-paced action game with a clock counting down on you, it's really annoying when you can't stop on time and turn around and look. Also, sticking to BMX-style obstacles is sometimes a pain. Having these double dirt jumps is a little annoying. If you've ever played an ATV or a dirt bike racing game, you've seen this done better. You can preload your shocks and tweak your air time to match where the landing is. But with this, you just pedal as much as you can, hold down X for a second, and then let go. It doesn't really feel like you're flowing with the dirt course and landing everything just right. In fact, if you overshoot a jump, it might not even count it. The other thing is having fakie. I know that's just how it works with bikes. You do 360s or 720s on straight airs, 180s, 540s, and 900s on transition, but it just doesn't play very well. It sucks trying to whip around the best trick you can do just to land in fakie and have it basically ruin your line. You can hit up to turn around, and if you don't get stuck, that works, but it took away most of your speed, and that's not easy to come by. Land a trick to fakie in a half pipe, and you have to do 2 or 3 airs to get back to where you were, assuming you can turn around at all. Sometimes you turn around in a ramp at the wrong time, and then you just have to turn around again. It's a mess. Yeah, that's what you get for trying to ride backward on your bike, but it's just not as fun from a gameplay perspective. I miss being able to do a 360 to fakie, then do a trick switch, then come back and do something nollie. So as good as this game is, it would be better on a skateboard. The game does try to help you out a little bit though. Every time you ride on vert, it will do a 180 for you. Do an X up, you'll land it back forward. No big deal, unless you do a flip. For some reason, it will always make you land that to fakie. You have to spin those yourself. You'll forget about this a lot and land a fakie on accident all the time. Another annoyance is a lack of camera control. I know this was very common for games at the time, but there are a lot of times when you'll see the alert on screen that tells you you're close to a challenge, but you can't see it. You can't stop and look around freely. That would have been a really big help. Okay, so the game is mostly good. You're having a good time beating levels and clearing competitions. Next thing you know, you beat the final level. What do you get? Well, you get the secret bike. It's weird, during my playthrough, I tried to change my bike, but I didn't see anything in there, and now I have the secret bike, but I also had all of these too. That probably would have made a big difference because it's the only way to boost your stats, but I also noticed all the hardcore challenges. So you get the 4 amateur goals, the 4 pro goals, and now you can go back and play all the old levels with these new challenges. And these are cool, but they're also really, really hard. Here I am with the secret bike, which has the best stats you can get. My challenge is to grind 4 light posts. Hitting just this one is almost impossibly high. It feels like you have to break the game and glitch it out even to get onto this thing. So if you're up for a challenge, the hardcore mode has got you covered. You know, you really get your money's worth out of this game. There's a ton of stuff to do here. If this was Tony Hawk 2, I'd probably be on my 3rd playthrough by now. So that's Dave Mirra, a game that I was not really interested in at the time, and a game that sat at the bottom of my recommended games list. You guys send me suggestions all the time. Now I understand why. This one made it to that list because it has a lot of really good stuff going on. And I played some of the Dave Mirra and Matt Hoffman games, mostly through demo discs and stuff at the time, and I was never really blown away. But this one was really good, and I'm glad that I played it. If it's something that interests you, go ahead and check it out. I have a lot of other game reviews and things that you can check out too right here. Do a lot more than just that though, lots of other skateboarding content. Hit my logo on screen right there to subscribe so you can keep learning new things about skateboarding 3 times a week. Thanks for watching.